joining us now. Politico White House and Foreign Affairs correspondent Eli Stokols, New York Times reporter and MSNBC contributor Jeremy Peters, former U.S. attorney and MSNBC legal analyst Joyce Vance, and opinion national politics writer for the New York Times, Michelle Cottle. Michelle, welcome to the show.
Thanks.
All right, Joyce, I will begin with you. Is it legal, or what are the legal ramifications, I can say, for the president demanding on social media that his attorney general go after his political enemies?
Right. I mean, this is, I think, the ultimate fear everyone has always expressed about a Trump presidency in regards to the Justice Department, that he would decide to use the Justice Department like a political tool in his hip pocket instead of permitting DOJ to follow the Constitution, uphold the law, and prosecute cases based on the facts and the evidence. But it's clear from this weekend post on social media that Trump doesn't care about the facts or the evidence. He's prejudged the guilt of these individuals. And so the legal ramifications, Katie, I think will become apparent if these cases go ahead. Will grand juries indict? Will prosecutors be able to convict? Very likely not, in the absence of sufficient evidence, not just to prove their case, but in some of these settings, it sounds as though sufficient evidence to prove that a crime was actually committed. This is rank politics, not prosecution.
Eric Seibert resigned on Friday, Jeremy, because he believed he was being forced to bring charges, this is according to the reporting, against Letitia James without sufficient evidence to do so. There was this idea that she committed mortgage fraud. Letitia James, by the way, is the prosecutor here in New York who secured that $500 million settlement against him for fraud. By the way, that was overturned. The money, the number on that was too high. So the climate here, who is this person that's going to be replacing Eric Seibert? Lindsay Halligan.
Well, I think it matters less who the person is than how loyal they will be to President Trump and how soon we'll be having this conversation again. I mean, the way that President Trump has behaved in the 8-9 months that he's been president really is to shake down whoever he thinks has something that he can give them, that they want from him. I mean, look at Harvard University, look at Columbia, look at what he did just over the weekend with Jimmy Kimmel and ABC. Look at what he did with CBS. I mean, if you need something from Donald Trump, I think right now is a pretty you're going to be squeezed. Now is the time where you're going to be squeezed.
The climate, I think, that's what you're getting to there, and I think that's correct. It is interesting. I keep going back to a conversation I had at the beginning of this administration, talking to somebody outside of politics. And he thought it would go a lot like the same as the last administration did, where it was very disorganized. There was a lot of turnover. There was a lot of infighting. There would be a lot of, Sturm und Drang, but nothing would really get done. And I said, no, I think they really know what they're doing this time. Look at Project 2025. Look at who he has around him. Look at, the support that the people who are around him have testified toward. They are much more adept at politics and the wielding of power in Washington this time around, Eli.
Absolutely. And they're all on the same page. They are all on Donald Trump's team. They don't come in with a career in the Defense Department, or they don't come in with years and years of political. And these are Donald Trump people. They are MAGA people in the White House. They are all on the same page. And they are not going to be there unless they are doing exactly as he wants. And so, you have a president who was out of the White House for 4 years and who thought about the people that he hired, who in the end criticized him, testified against him, quit on him, had to be fired. All that drama. He didn't want it anymore. He wanted people who towed the line, his line. And, seeing an attorney general resign, right, that's the outlier in this term, because nobody that close to him is doing that. I mean, I don't think we appreciate how unusual it is to see the attorney general, the president writing to her directly on social media, telling her what to do when, up until this presidency, there's been this long tradition of independence and separation between the White House and the Justice Department. And you now have an attorney general who is traveling with the president to sporting events, who is there, propping him up at cabinet meetings, complimenting him. It's just a very different situation. And I think it's what gives a lot of legal observers real consternation.
Yeah, Michelle, I mean, there's a reason why I started with the Alberto Gonzalez controversy. It's the closest allusion I have to the moment that we are living in right now. And back then, this idea that U.S. attorneys were fired on political grounds created a real stir in Washington, and not just among Democrats. There were a number of Republicans who were outraged. Congressional, investigations with Republicans demanding answers and being highly critical of President Bush's AG.
Yeah, I wouldn't be looking for that from this Congress going forward. I mean, what I noticed from the clip that you showed was how awkward George W. Bush looked. It's not that he looked guilty, but he looked a little uncomfortable having to answer questions about this. Whereas Trump's superpower is he is completely shameless. He always says the quiet part out loud when confronted about this sort of thing. He just doubles down on what a terrible person, say, Eric Siebert is, or what kind of vicious attacks he suffered at the hands of Tish James or Adam Schiff. I mean, it is completely his game, and everybody's just kind of letting him play it.
Joyce, bring us up to speed here. Go from the 2007 DOJ with the resignations and the anger and the testimony that flowed out of the DOJ into these congressional hearings, and bring us to today, to 2025. How much of a difference is there between those two departments?
In 2007, Katie, I was in the U.S. Attorney's Office in Birmingham working as the appellate chief. And when this story of the fired U.S. attorneys broke, everyone in the Justice Department was talking about it. It was an outrage. Although the U.S. attorneys were fired for different reasons, a lot of the concerns about them that the White House had focused on a failure to prosecute enough public corruption cases, or a failure to go after people who were being accused of voting fraud. And at the time, it was clear to everyone, regardless of party, that what had happened was wrong. Fast forward to where we are today. Now we've got a president who wants to have the ability to directly order the Attorney General, and by extension, the U.S. attorneys, to prosecute cases, right? Doesn't want people to engage in the calculus prosecutors are supposed to engage in of whether they have sufficient evidence to obtain and sustain a conviction. And we're hearing barely a ruffle on the surface. Not among the career people in DOJ, who I imagine are deeply outraged after having seen this social media post. But there's nothing in leadership. There are no U.S. attorneys coming to express outrage. And of course, as y'all have been noting, no outrage on the Hill. This is what we've come to expect from this administration. I think shamelessness doesn't begin to capture it. There's simply no sense of obligation to uphold the oath to the Constitution. We now all live in service to one man, Donald Trump, and his whims are the rule of the day.
Joyce, if a prosecutor within the DOJ decides to bring a case, and one prosecutor already said there was not enough evidence, what is the likelihood that they'll be able to get down the line on a prosecution, get a grand jury to sign off on it, and then get a judge to not dismiss the case or to get a conviction?
The irony here is that Donald Trump may have gutted the case that he's so desperate for prosecutors to bring by doing this. And we should note that Eric Siebert, the fired or the now resigned U.S. attorney in the Eastern District of Virginia, was a career guy. He had been in the office for 10 years. He had done everything from public corruption to drug trafficking, highly regarded by the court and also by Democratic senators, which doesn't come easy these days if you're a Republican. So this is somebody who understood what was on the table when he decided not to prosecute this case. That means that any case, should it go forward in the future, or if prosecutors are able to get it past, for instance, a grand jury, defendants will have a built-in defense of selective and vindictive prosecution. And those motions are usually hard to succeed on. Hunter Biden tried that, saying that he had been singled out because of who his dad was and had been prosecuted for crimes no one else was prosecuted for. And a judge refused to dismiss his case. But when you have the president of the United States ordering your prosecution and doing it in connection with his own political concerns, that starts to look like an awfully good defense in that moment, Katie.
So I wonder what if they understand that maybe they won't be able to fully bring these cases, and maybe he doesn't understand that, but I wonder if the other intention here is just to put a chill in the air. Well, I mean, you mentioned all those other institutions a moment ago, Jeremy.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's doing. I mean, and it almost, to your point, doesn't matter whether or not they are prosecuted. The threat of prosecution for anybody, even people with all the money in the world, to hire the best attorneys is still a lot of pressure to be living under. And what you saw happen with Jimmy Kimmel, what you've seen happen with, Ann Seltzer at the Des Moines Register, the way that Trump has gone after media, the way that he's gone after elite universities. He went after a pollster who all she did was get something wrong and then say, I'm sorry, here's why I got it wrong, which is, a pretty good defense against a defamation lawsuit. That aside, all of this points to an intimidation tactic that we've seen Trump use time and time again, from his time as a real estate developer to his time as president and candidate.